India is now exposing the fast-spreading tentacles of China, be it Taiwan or Sri Lanka. India is not taking a step back. Meanwhile, India has made it clear that it will be quite stern against the Chinese aggression. India accused China of militarization of the Taiwan Strait in an escalating war of words triggered by the Chinese spy ship docking in a controversial Sri Lankan port. India had earlier slammed the Chinese envoy and firmly told Beijing that what Colombo needs now is support, not unwanted pressure or unnecessary controversies to serve another country's agenda, hitting out at China for its remarks on India's objection to the docking of its high-tech ship at the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. The Indian High Commission in Lanka noted the remarks of the Chinese ambassador and slammed it as violation of basic diplomatic etiquette. Meanwhile, it is to be seen how the current president of Sri Lanka is reacting to these developments and why he is caving in to China. Let me bring in Ambassador Veena Sikri, former diplomat, on the broadcast. We also have Dr. Arvind Singh Tejawat from the University of Kelaniya in Sri Lanka joining us live. Major Mohammad Ali Shah, defense analyst, is live with us. Professor Madhav Narapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is also joining us live. Ambassador Sikri, let me get you in here first. Obviously, India deciding to take a stand that it will not cave in to China anymore. We will not bow down. We will not stay silent, which is why these rebuttals are being constantly issued. How do you view this strategy?
Muted, just a second. Yes, I think the Indian government has taken the correct stand in not keeping quiet on this very grave, provocative statement made by the Chinese ambassador in Colombo, because it is very clear what Chinese goal and objectives are. They want to regularize visits by such spy ships as the Yuan 15, which was there last week, and they want to make it as though Hambantota is de facto a base for Chinese ships to visit. And certainly the Indian government is not going to allow this to happen, and it is quite clear that this is a spy ship operating under the PLA and not under the normal dispensation. So I think that the Chinese would have been very surprised, but they would not have expected that the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka would have given this very sharp retort, saying this is a complete breach of diplomatic etiquette to blame a third country sitting in while the Chinese ambassador is speaking from Sri Lanka. It is very true that the Chinese government is putting this pressure on President Ranil Singh because, of course, he's just joined as president, but also because of the previous history that when President Ranil Singh was the prime minister last time, that is when the Hambantota port was handed over to China on the 99-year lease in exchange for a $1 billion balance of payment support. So the Chinese debt trap for Sri Lanka remains intact. This is the worrying portion. And the IMF, in the negotiations with Sri Lanka that are ongoing as we speak, is repeatedly telling Sri Lanka to renegotiate their debt with China, and China is not giving in on this at all. And they're being very, very harsh on this subject. And they're also threatening Sri Lanka that they will prevent the IMF from giving any loan to Sri Lanka. Whereas we know that with Pakistan, on the other hand, they already have tied up, substantial loans for Pakistan, not only from IMF, but of course bilaterally from other countries like Saudi Arabia as well. So it is a very difficult situation for Sri Lanka. And India has extended every help to Sri Lanka, more than $3.8 billion in assistance just in the last 6 to 8 months. And this has proved like a lifeline, a very valuable lifeline to Sri Lanka in terms of the food, the fuel, the medical help, and all other needy, the fertilizers and all other needy goods that the Chinese economy needed at that time. And India is willing to do even more. China, on the other hand, as we know, has been remarkably reticent in giving any help to Sri Lanka at this time of crisis. And even the fertilizer that they sent has turned out to be a complete non-starter because it had to be rejected altogether. And this is a further loss of foreign exchange for Sri Lanka. So I think the contrast between the Indian assistance to Sri Lanka at this time and the Chinese assistance to Sri Lanka, which has been very, very reticent, this contrast is coming up sharper and sharper. And the Chinese are so embarrassed by it that A, they are trying to call out India in Sri Lanka, which is totally incorrect and against all diplomatic etiquette. And secondly, they're trying to pressurize President Wickremesinghe into normalizing such visits by spy ships to Hambantota, almost making it like a base. So we have to be very alert. We have to stay alert. We have to call out any such, things that the Chinese government is trying to do. We also know that other than Hambantota, the Chinese are also focusing on the Colombo port city that they are building. And this Colombo port city is being planned as an area which is not even under Sri Lanka jurisdiction at all. This is another area of worry. So the Chinese presence in Sri Lanka remains an area of major concern for India, and we are fully within our rights to call out all the parties concerned to make sure that our security interests are protected.
Yes, Professor Madhu Nalapath, come in here on this response of India to China constantly. We are exposing them for their statements, for their doublespeak, for their lies, for their hypocrisy. Do you believe this is a good step and it is something that now must continue?
Uday, it's a very good step, and if I may point out, we have been the odd man out or the odd country out in the Quad. Australia, Japan and United States issued a very strong condemnation of the extremely provocative activities of China in the Taiwan Straits. By the way, I'm speaking to you from Taipei, the capital of Taiwan. India kept quiet. Then, I think if I'm not mistaken, those provocative moves took place from the 2nd to around the 9th or so. But on the 13th, India finally gave a statement, and that, thank God for that. But it did not give a statement together with the Quad partners. Now, the fact of the matter is that for some reason, our foreign policy establishment has been very reluctant over the last 75 years to really call out China. And I'm glad that External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has broken that mold and is now openly calling out China in a very robust manner. That is something that is extremely welcome. And the reality of the situation is all the democracies are linked together. A threat to one democracy is a threat to every democracy. And therefore, what we are talking about, the Taiwan Straits, you're seeing here the kind of a lot of this kind of black propaganda. Oh, we will use nuclear weapons, we will do this, we will do that. And all kinds of, all kinds of things are happening as a consequence of trying to psychologically affect the people of Taiwan. And so far as Sri Lanka is concerned, it is in a location where it is absolutely essential for defense of the Indo-Pacific. There is no way that Sri Lanka can go into the hands of the authoritarians. If they try and take over Sri Lanka, then I can assure you it is a grave danger to all of us, the entire Indo-Pacific. So from that point of view, the Sri Lankan authorities have to understand that, and I'm sorry that Ranil Wickremesinghe has allowed this particular spy ship to come there. And personally, I think it is an act that shows the complete subservience to China of some of the Rajapaksa brothers who are unfortunately in a position of control where Ranil is concerned. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace to Rajapaksa family that some of them are selling out Sri Lanka and selling it out to China.
Let me bring in Dr. Arvind Tejawat as well. Dr. Arvind Tejawat, since you're joining us from Sri Lanka, what's the sense on ground there in the island nation? What is the ordinary Sri Lankan thinking of this subservience to China of the new government, and also the fact that China has been very, very sarcastic and caustic in their comments vis-a-vis India's reluctance to actually have this spy ship dock in Sri Lanka?
Right. First of all, I connected with you here from New Delhi. I was there in 2016 as a visiting professor in Kelaniya, the University of Kelaniya.
Oh, so you're not at University of Kelaniya anymore? Yeah. Okay, so let's correct that. Let's correct that. You are former professor at University of Kelaniya, Sri Lanka. Yes, go ahead now.
Right. So yes, I agreed with the opinion of the other panelists, and I suppose it's really a good move in an Indian foreign policy towards China, when the China is sending their spy ship to Hambantota port and trying to interfere in the South Asian politics. Somehow the Chinese They are trying to challenge the Indian, and even the Chinese, they made a statement that India is trying to interference and is not respecting the Sri Lankan sovereignty. So it's a diplomatic statement, and we understand. So what India made the statement that China is militarizing the Taiwan Strait, which is 100% right, because the China is doing the same here in the Malacca Strait. So I suppose that now the Indian diplomats and the Indian government has given a clear message to the China that if you will try to interference in the South Asian region, then the India will not keep quiet and will respond accordingly. And I suppose that China would not like to indulge himself to indulge with several countries, and so I suppose that the Chinese diplomat should think in a positive way and shall try to understand that India is a very important country in the South Asian region and shall try not to make any uncomfortable relationship by doing any provoking acts. So yeah, that I believe. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let me also quickly, in fact, bring in Major Mohammad Ali Shah, who's also joining us at this point. Major Mohammad Ali Shah, your reaction to this stand taken by India, and also, the fact that China has obviously been very rattled, it seems, by this growing proximity of India and Sri Lanka.
India always takes a very mature, very calculated, very balanced, very reasonable stand, always. In fact, our foreign policy has been praised by our not so friendly neighborhood, by Imran Khan as well. So yes, the stand taken over here was absolutely clear. And also one more thing, Uday, a point to be observed. When Yon 5 was coming to Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka initially had said we have denied them the permission, the same time from Pakistan, the PNS Taimur was coming, to which Sri Lanka had allowed. They said, okay, we'll give you permission. Now, do you think it can be a coincidence where Pakistani ship and Chinese ships are coming? No, obviously not. Definitely not. I will never believe that. So they obviously was a larger picture involved there. Now, Yon 5, which they say it's a research vessel, all hogwash. China, they are experts at lying, at psychological warfare, information warfare. It is evident to the naked eye. It has got radars on it. So many radars. Externally, so many radars. Internally, God knows what must be having on the ship. It is definitely a surveillance vessel used for spying. In the last 4 years, there have been 8 attempts by China, more than 8 in fact, of spying. And Yon 5 has a radius of over 750 kilometers to actually tap in there. Which means our entire port of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, out of Odisha, they would be at risk. So yes, most certainly, and they parked there for some time, and Sri Lanka later on said, okay, we would give them permission. What pressure did they have? Well, I understand the fact that Sri Lanka has given their port on a 99-year-old lease to China, Hambantota port. I understand that. I understand their pressure. I understand the fact that we've given an aid of over $3.8 billion to Sri Lanka. We've always stood by them. And I understand the fact that they must be in a dilemma. They must be between the devil and the deep sea. And they must have had their own reasons. Fine. But then very fact remains that India's stand right now, Mr. S. Jaishankar, his stand conveys it all. His stand has always, be it buying oil from Russia, be it anything. Our stand has always been crystal clear, very logical, and something which is praiseworthy there.
Yes, let me also, in fact, quickly rope back in Professor Nalapath onto the discussion. Professor Nalapath, now, the fact over here obviously is that Ranil Wickremesinghe, it seems, is very, very subservient to China. How should then, now there has obviously been this conscious decision by India to hit out at China, something which you've appreciated, a strategy with which Ambassador Veena Sikri has also agreed with earlier. But now if we talk about our policy vis-a-vis Sri Lanka, what should that be? Is course correction needed? What introspection is needed by us looking at this stand of the new Sri Lankan dispensation? What's your view?
Uday, I'd like to say one thing very clearly, and that is you cannot reward bad behavior. We have had a habit in India, again, over several decades of turning the other cheek. And all that happens is we get slapped on the other cheek, then we turn the cheek that was initially slapped, and we get slapped again. So you cannot reward bad behavior. The reality is that the Chinese system is you buy up the elites, and doesn't matter what happens to the common person, that common person they don't care about. Now the fact is, if the elites are such that they are dominated by China, and this Pakistani ship, my information is there were a large number of Chinese personnel on this Pakistan ship. Let's be honest, the Pakistan military is a subjugated military, subjugated to the PLA. And they were Chinese agents on that particular ship. So just in case the Sri Lankans would not succumb to that pressure and the ship could not come, they could use the Pakistan ship. So that is the point. The reality of situation is that if you have a government in a country that is indulging in an action that is prejudicial to Indian security, it makes it very difficult to justify to the people of India that you are lavishing money from a country that is by no means well off to them. So I would like to say very clearly that I'm afraid Ranil Wickremesinghe, I don't blame the poor man, even the 99-year lease, frankly, it was a very, 99 years means for eternity. Heaven knows what's going to happen in 99 years or even in 29 years. So the reality of situation is that India has got to show that it will not tolerate this kind of behavior in which Sri Lanka goes against the stated promise of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, that Sri Lanka will never go against Indian security interests. Gotabaya's word has been thrown to the dust, possibly by some other brothers who are closer to China than he is. So the reality is, unless that China faction is exposed, well, the reality is Sri Lanka cannot be regarded, the government in Sri Lanka cannot be regarded as a friendly government. The fact is, sometimes hard choices are needed by a country. You can't always run away from hard choices and hide behind soft choices and dress it up with words. You have to match words with action. And in my view, Ranil Wickremesinghe's government has proved itself to be a prisoner of those Rajapaksas who are a prisoner of China. And in that context, I would like to say, we have to have a comprehensive review of our relationship with this government and make it very clear what we are doing is not anything on the Sri Lankan people. It is a review of our relations with the government, which plainly is selling out the sovereignty of Sri Lanka.
Yes, indeed. Ambassador Veena Sikri, come in here on of course, how India should view the Sri Lankan relationship according to you. What is your perspective on whether there is a course correction in our relations that's needed, a change in diplomatic stance, and also which way is this Chinese-Sri Lankan relationship headed now? Do you believe it's pretty obvious with this decision taken? Is that the way things are going to stay, or was this an aberration?
No, I think that I of course respect what Dr. Madhavan Amnalpajdi had said, but I'd like to say that, and I'd said in a previous broadcast on your channel, that this is the Chinese way of putting pressure on a new leader and then forcing them, dragging them into their camp. But I would like to say that in keeping with our neighborhood first foreign policy, we have to do this gently. We have to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And I think the very manner in which it has come out in the open, forcing the Chinese ambassador in Sri Lanka to make that awful statement, which is in break of all diplomatic etiquette, the very manner in which that has happened has shown that the Chinese are under pressure. India has behaved very correctly. We have made our concerns clear. We have made our security issues clear. And I think we will continue to do so. But at the same time, we're not going to punish the people of Sri Lanka for this. and we are going to continue the humanitarian assistance to the people of Sri Lanka that we have started a whole process, and which is very much appreciated by the people of Sri Lanka. Now, that is the way to continue. You have to continue to assist the people of Sri Lanka on the humanitarian side, continue to put pressure on the government of Sri Lanka, no matter who it is, calling out our own security concerns and telling them where they have acted in breach of India's security concerns. So I think this matter, and this is not only India, this is also a lot of other countries have expressed this concern to Sri Lanka. The American government has expressed their concern to Sri Lanka. The IMF is telling them again and again to renegotiate their debt with China. Sri Lanka has to renegotiate their debt with China before the IMF will consider giving a loan to Sri Lanka. So it is President Ranil Wickremesinghe is caught between a rock and a hard place. He is in a very difficult position. It is in our interest to work with all levels of opinion. We know, for example, that this particular decision to reallow, after saying no to this Yuan Wang 5 ship coming in, under pressure from the former naval chief of Sri Lanka, under pressure from the Rajapaksa family, President Ranil Wickremesinghe changed his position. And after all, he is being supported by the SLPP in parliament. So it is, one has to understand the difficulties of the situation, understand the importance of maintaining the friendship with Sri Lanka, with the people of Sri Lanka above all. And this is a very important cost correction that India has made, that in all the assistance we have given, $3.8 billion and more, we have made sure it is targeting the people of Sri Lanka. It has reached them and it has been appreciated by them. So obviously, this pressure of the people of Sri Lanka will be reflected in what they want their own government to do. There is an election coming up next year in Sri Lanka where the presidential post will be up for re-election. So it is a complex situation. The pressure from China is not going to go away. But I think India calling out the situation in Taiwan Straits is also important. And we have to see that in the Taiwan Straits, 2 American naval ships have sailed through the Taiwan Straits. So nobody is keeping quiet there as well. And I must say that all these pressures building up on President Xi Jinping just 6 weeks before his Communist Party Congress, this does not bode well for him as well. So when India has started to call out these situations now, 6 weeks before the 4th Communist Party Congress, it shows that India is giving it the utmost attention. India is trying by every which way to carry along the people of Sri Lanka, to maintain the pressure on the government of Sri Lanka, and to preserve and safeguard our own security concerns.
Right. Dr. Tejawat, now you aren't in Sri Lanka anymore, but obviously you were for a considerable period of time earlier. What was the sense on ground that you got from Sri Lankans? Are they happy with this constant subservience to China? What is the perception of India on ground there? To give us the on-ground perspective that you saw while you were there.
Right. The Indian foreign policy is always in favor of the Sri Lankan people. We are the pro-Sri Lankan people. We are following the pro-Sri Lankan people foreign policy. And it's a political statement, but still I would love to give that there is some political families who has taken the Sri Lankan foreign policy towards the pro-China, which was not a good decision, because the Sri Lankan government has, and the Sri Lankan, especially the Sri Lankan people, has got nothing out of it. Means they kept themselves in a debt, and they are now facing a worse situation. Now the India is a very important country for them, but they have invited China to interfere in their country. So what the China is making a statement for the India is not true, but contrary, what the India is saying is very much true, that it's China, it's not India who's interfering in Sri Lanka. The India and Sri Lanka has relations, not only the political relations, but we are having a cultural relationships from the centuries. And it's not a China who should decide that what the India and Sri Lanka are, in what way they should run the relations. The India always respected the Sri Lankan sovereignty. That's very much true. But here, if the Indian diplomats, they are making a statement, I suppose it's obvious reactions that what the Chinese people and what the Chinese diplomat following the foreign policy is, of course, militarizing not only the Malacca state, but the Taiwan states too. So we must make the China understand that this is not the right diplomacy to follow. We people should think about the development of both the countries, the China and India, has really lots of good opportunity to work together, because both we are the emerging country and we are looking for a good future. So the India and China, of course, they move forward towards by following the good foreign
Alisha,
policy.
with the last word, closing comment, Mohammad Alisha.
I'll quickly conclude by saying that, India's foreign policy regarding India's way of dealing with any situation has been exceptional. It's been something which exemplary. That is the only reason why we saw during the midst of the peak of the Russia-Ukraine war as well, we saw so many diplomatic visits. We saw visits of so many head of states coming to India and seeking guidance and advice and help and whatnot. So yes, most certainly, I would like to tell our foreign policy makers, आप आगे बढ़ो, हम तुम्हारे साथ हैं.
A quick break on that note. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.